Thank you for tuning in to the Voices of Orion project. I've got an incredible guest here tonight, and things went awry already because we were already talking, had this great conversation for about 15 minutes, and I didn't realize that I didn't hit the record button. So we're going to have to rehash this whole thing over again. Anyway, this is the right. This is the amazing Diane. I call her Miss Sweet Blonde Sugar, and she's been helping me out and helping me do this whole thing and get ready for it for about 18 months now. So Diane, please tell everyone about yourself a little bit, and then I'll jump in and interrupt you whenever it seems like it's the right time.
Well, I don't really have a lot to tell you. I mean, I've been hairdressing ever since ever, and I'm into glass work. I love anything glass. That's hence the name. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And I'm always been interested in UFOs and psychic stuff, and so yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Well, you're not giving me enough. So how about
you've got to pull that out of me. You know, you just got to like do the interview. Well, not really the interviewer, but you know what I mean.
No, we've already done that. So let's pull it back out a second time. So you're also what? Is it a meta healer as well? I know you do tarot card readings and meta healing, and you've done some work on me.
Done it. We've done a little bit of work with you. I haven't done lots of. I'd love to do that type of work full on, and that would be my dream, to be able to just work on people and help them, you know, get over whatever they've got over. Psychologically, I can probably help people in some directions, but I mean, I've got a long way to go. I've got a lot to learn, and I think that the ability's there. It's just maybe the practice I need. I don't know. You tell me.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I think you're going to get that opportunity with the Voices of Orion project when you join me each week to do this podcast, if not one or more times. And we're going to have the forum together so you can work with people there, and we can do a lot of different things with people. And I think it'll be a great opportunity to.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think it's
skills.
It's great to see what you're doing. I think the idea of getting people together on this sort of platform is brilliant, because it gives everybody an opportunity to talk and not be ridiculed, rubbished, criticised for their beliefs or whatever they've had happen, or whatever experiences they've had. So I have to congratulate you on that, and I hope it goes really well.
Well, I'd like to congratulate you for being here and for making this happen, because it means a lot to me. And so anyway, let's get back to what we were talking about before the record button was on. And you had some interesting things to talk about in regard to some psychic healings that you did on me, and where you got a chance to meet my higher self a little bit. And so please go ahead, tell everybody about that.
Well, I just think the interesting thing with you was when we were doing some healings, and to connect with you was quite easy. But the fact that you were there, but your higher self was just there, and then as soon as I put my hands out to do the healing, it was like he would just straight in. See, I say he, but then you say there's a lot of feminine energy there. So, and there is, but it was just like, oh yeah, beauty, like I'm going to take that healing energy, just hand it over. So, and that was really quite interesting, because when I'm normally doing healings on people and you hold their hands, it's almost like they have everything's together. It's almost like they come together when you're doing the healing, and then you do the healing, and then it's sort of, you break that energy off and go and do your own whatever. But yours was different, and that's what was one of the interesting things about working on you. But also getting different aspects of where you were, because we're so far away from each other, and also being shown different things at different times that I wasn't really aware of, like maybe the color shirt you were wearing or something stupid like that was totally,
What in the world was that? That's the dirt bike. Well, that perfect timing now.
Actually, I thought it was... he's off.
So you live on a farm. I actually thought that was a large cow fart for a second there. It kind of sounded like one. Like, maybe a cow back that's rear end up to the window. with a
Sounded a
little
bit
track
like that,
mark.
didn't it?
Right.
So yeah,
Anyway.
working on you was interesting because it's not like other experiences I've had as far as other healings and other, connections, and that type of work. And that's where I said to you, I thought you had been hijacked. That was the word I said to you, I think, wasn't it? And you weren't, your higher self and you didn't seem to be connected. You seem to be completely separate. And they keep pushing that on us. I noticed in a lot of this new age stuff that we're separate, we're separate. I've never felt that we were separate. I felt that, the higher self and you are one. But yeah, I don't know. It was just a different experience for me, I guess. And that's pretty much what I'm trying to put out there. It
Yeah, well,
wasn't what I expected.
that would be what it is you're under a controlled state of consciousness. So we can get into that in a little bit, but what I wanted to talk about, because it's kind of hard for me to remember what we just talked about, because I'm trying to remember if we already brought this up, but we already talked about it prior to the recorded button being on. So anyway, yeah, I want to talk about how we met, because people need to hear about that. And I'll start. There was a leak project video. Now, did we talk about this since I pressed the record button?
No.
I don't think we did. Okay, great. So I don't want to do it a second time, get myself lost. There was there was a leak project video, and it was a person who was being interviewed. He was a contactee, and he had a lot of UFO sightings, and a lot of this was actually on television. And his name was Michael. And I don't remember his last name. I should have did some homework on this, but I didn't. And it was very unusual because there was literally about 50,000 views in about 2 to 3 days. And I started this incredible discussion, and it had like, I think 117 or 147 comments. So it was just, it actually lasted about 3 or 4 days before the discussion completely died down. But in the very beginning, in the first comment that I posted, I was subconsciously programmed to use a specific term that your father used, because this was kind of like engineered in advance. This is how it was explained to me after the fact. And it's subconscious psychic programming and subconscious psychic networking. And the networking aspect comes in when you have 2 or more people coming together for a specific task. So in this case, I was programmed to use the word or the phrase or the term peanut gallery. And it's a very outdated, antiquated term. It's not used anymore. And I never used that. And it was just something where I actually, as I typed it, I stopped myself and I said, no one's going to know what this means. Why am I doing it? And I just thought to myself, I'll just leave it in. And I did. And that was the first couple, that was in the first line, that so you could see it. It was, and you saw that. And tell me what happened.
Well, that was the draw card for me. I mean, apart from the brilliant explanation that you had underneath there, the peanut gallery part was the like ting. That was the yeah, as you say. And I just want to point that out too. When I'm doing card readings and stuff for people, it's the words that you use that are so important, because what I would use and what you would use in normal conversation never usually comes up in a reading. And I know that sounds weird, but you have to use the right words when you're doing a reading. And I get told that constantly. It's like, this will make them listen, or that will make them listen. So it's important. And with you, that was me. So you were getting told. So that was that connection for us to get, chatting. And as I said, then I was emailing you and annoying you, and finally you answered me.
Well, actually, what was interesting about that is that when you were emailing me, I forget what it was, but you kept asking me something. Eric, I know it was. You wanted to know if I could email, if you could email me. And I kept telling you yes. And it wasn't, I guess you missed the comment or something, or because you know how it shows up in your inbox. So I'm like, and I said to myself, I said, who is this guy? And I sensed this masculine energy, right? And that was the interesting thing. So, and all that plays into what we found out about each other afterward, which was that we were actually married in Egypt as part of the priesthood. And it was 18,000 years ago. And this is information that I got, but it resonated with her. So it was 18,000 years ago. It was in Egypt. It was under a pharaoh named Sepho-Gaif. And I was her wife, and she was my husband. So I was the female, she was the male in this particular lifetime. And we had an arranged marriage. And the way I understood it to be is, back then, I think we were 8 and 9 when they actually took us to the temple, because back then the way it worked was if you were a child and you were born, no matter who you were born to, if you exhibited psychic abilities, then it was customary to take you to the priesthood or take you to whatever temple it was. And this was done in Greece and Egypt and a lot of different places. So, and this is how the ETs had kind of set this whole thing up, because they were engineering a religion or creating a religion for social engineering purposes. And but anyway, so we both got taken to the priesthood, and we're both made part of that, and we're raised by, I guess, the priesthood or helpers or however they did it. Because I have no conscious memories of this. We just have emotional memories at this point, and there was promises made, but it's taken a long time for us to get to this point to where it would be useful to us to have these memories. So hopefully that happens, and hopefully we do get to go to Egypt and walk barefoot in the sand and touch the stones and have some memory recall and do an awesome podcast. That would be a dream come true. But yeah, so we've got this amazing kind of like emotional memory connection together. And would you like to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, the same thing, like I didn't get the whole marriage thing, but I did get that, you were feminine, you were a female. And then it was like, and then I got told, and you were a male. And I thought, okay. And then I kind of sort of wondered if we were married or whatever. But from there, I suppose just that connection. And then the Egypt thing, that was the thing that was very interesting, and trying to figure that out as well, because you talk about past lives, and I just want to bring this up because since this whole truth thing's come out, what is your take on past lives? How important are they to our now existence? I mean, are we supposed to be sifting through everything that's happened? Because at the moment I've got a couple of people I'm talking with. And, normally in your normal existence, okay, you live a bit, you do whatever, and something will happen in this life that will trigger memories from a past life. And sometimes you don't even realize, or you get upset about something, you go, hang on, why am I upset about that? But then you find out that there's something that's happened previous to this life. Mm-hmm. Generally, you'll have one thing happen, okay, and then you deal with that. Now, I've got people that I'm in contact with now that they are literally getting bombarded with their past life information, like not one thing or two things, but like 50 things are coming at them from 50 different lifetimes. What is that about? Have you got any sort of insight on that? Because I just had one particular person I was working with, and I'm like, oh, how do I help this woman? She's really stressing and she's not coping with a lot of stuff. And when I sort of went to bed that night, I got this vision of her, and she was sitting in this, it was like dark water, and she looked totally different to what she does. And she's got these lilies sitting on the top of the water, and she's pulling these lilies towards her, and she's like plucking out petals, and then she's pushing them away from her. And I went, oh, okay. So she's got all these past lives which represent the lilies, and she's plucking what she needs from those to move forward, and she's pushing the rest away. So there's like, it's almost like it's like a sifting process, I guess, and gaining and gleaning the information that you need from past lives to go forward. Because with her, there's this huge forward movement I'm feeling. And I just wanted to get your take on that, or your, what you thought about that, because that was something I wanted to ask you.
Okay, well, do you recognize any of these people be starseeds or earthbound?
Oh, I think she's definitely a starseed. I'd say that's a big, huge tick. Yeah.
And that's an easier question to answer, because there's an awakening process taking place. Now, depending on who you talk to, they'll have different reasons for the awakening, or they'll define it differently. With me, it's the more of the scientific based version of the planetary consciousness simulation, which is being reduced. And then we all have these etheric implants in us, everyone, no matter if you're a starseed or not. It's how they suppress our consciousness and control it. So the etheric implants can be, what they do is they program those so that you can have different psychic abilities or experiences. But also too, the intuition across the planet with everyone is starting to increase. So as the simulation, if you think of the simulation or the planetary consciousness simulation as being a white noise generator that drowns out the connection with source and makes you non-psychic to where you only have 5 senses. So if that's being reduced, then your intuition is going to be the first thing that you notice. And then according to what they have planned for you as a starseed, for example, or if you're say like just a regular terrestrial earthbound soul or earth human soul, there's apparently, and I don't have much information on that because most of what I have experienced as a starseed is basically from the starseed point of view. So that's something we're going to have to figure out later for people, because there's plenty of other people who are waking up who are just aren't starseeds, but they're psychically inclined, and they're having these experiences too, because there's a plan for them, and we just don't know what it is, but or how it actually works. But if you look across the board, people are waking up, and whereas before you could show people information, you could say there's a new world order, there's a shadow government, and they just it didn't click. It didn't make sense to them. Now people are open to that. They're more open to this information, and they're feeling this gut instinct, which is their intuition, for example. But when it comes to starseeds, because we have this awakening going on, everybody's on this kind of individual path of waking up, but we're really on the same one. But everyone has kind of an itinerary to, specifically for them. So this is obviously just part of the awakening process. And right now, also too, if you were going to wake up a population that's been in psychic slumber, for example, and you have this awakening, and you have this social engineering program taking place where you're going to transform the world and make it a better place by using the star seeds and the terrestrial light workers to be, we're going to be the social engineers. You're going to have a experimental phase first before you even get into the heart of it. And we're in that experimental phase right now where the extraterrestrials are doing these things to us, and they're monitoring us, and they're collecting lots of data so that they know how to cater their program, or actually how to fine tune their program for the future. Because you can look forward in time, and you can get these projections and different things, but you can plug variables into that. But you really need to actually do an experimental phase first, because you got the historical paradigm, to take into account. You've got all these different variables and all these different things going on in society that has to be taken into account. So we're in the experimental phase of that. But what you're basically just describing is people waking up. And as they wake up, they need other people who are already inclined to this type of thinking and understanding and have abilities. It's our job, it's our responsibility to go out and help them. And that's why what I've said before in like a few of my more recent videos, I've talked about how the Great Awakening should not be monetized. We should be helping each other for free whenever we can. And because if I help you, for example, you can help somebody else. And it's like, and that's the way this should work. It's a system. It's a social system of interaction. So yeah, we're going through the awakening process, and that's what you're describing. And it's fascinating, and it's inspiring to hear about it. So go ahead and share some more.
Well, also with her, when I did I said to her, look, we need to just have a look at your chakras and see how they're, how they're going, if they're balanced. And I started at the base chakra, and as I went up, when I got to her third eye chakra, it was just kaboom. It was so huge. I have never seen anything like that before. So I said to her, we really need to pull this into check, because, you're right out there, and you're also, you're putting yourself out there, but you're also opening up to other stuff that you may not need or want, because she's suffering a lot of tiredness and probably a bit of anxiety as well. So trying to just calm all that down. But I was just astounded at how much it was open. So I understand why she's, feeling worn out or overwhelmed or whatever, because she's just going through it's just so much. And I've never seen that before. As I said, you always see somebody has one issue, and it's one thing that they've brought through from a past life that's really bugged them, and then we deal with that, and then they're usually right for a while. But this is just like kaboom, like, yep, deal with this and cope with this. And I don't know how, if this is just one of thousands of people that are going through this, I don't know how they're dealing with it. And I think they need a tremendous amount of support, because they're not getting support in community because of the way the whole things going at the moment. And
Yeah,
I
the
won't mention
social.
that name because then they'll get rid of us.
Well, you have the social
Yeah.
conditioning is what you're referring to, and I got to take a few seconds here to turn the heat on because I'm in the basement and it's
Okay.
cold here, and you're in the summertime in the southern hemisphere, and I got to get. Oh, there it is. So you use my feet to turn it on. So if you hear a little bit of white noise and Zoom doesn't filter it out, it's very necessary because I'm freezing right now and I got this blanket and it's not working. Even my hands are cold. So anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt. Soon
No,
it'll be
that's
hot.
all. That's all really. I wasn't really thinking about anything else after that. I was just curious because, you've got that answer on that side and I've got the other answer on the other side. And this, for me, it's hard to put them both together. And I really feel that's why we've been put together, because as I said to you, like I've got the God aspect and you've got the ET aspect. So hopefully if we get our heads together,
Right.
we might be able to sift through stuff and work a few things out that have been hidden from us, or they're controlling that sort of side of things for their own benefit. So yeah.
Well, excuse me, you really touched on some good things because it is extremely important that we form a community that's strictly based on people learning to love one another. It has a sense of community about it where we help each other. And it's not, because what I've noticed is, and I've done a little bit of research by going into different groups and stuff like that. And just as a really good example, the last couple of weeks, I joined a Telegram group and it was through exopolitics.org. And it has formerly Megan Rose was involved in this, but it's Alex Collier, Elena Denon, and it's being hosted by Dr. Sala. It's actually his group, and it's about 100 to 120 people. And what I've noticed is that you've got all these different starseed influencers out there that have completely different stories that they're putting out. A lot of it's false information, but right now we're going through this phase to where the ETs, now you have people, just wanted to mention this, you have people out there that aren't really star seeds that are putting out false information in an attempt to make money. And it's not necessary just to point fingers and say who it is. But what we really need to focus on is the people that are out there who are actually getting bad information to where they're putting out falsehoods combined with truth. And the reason that's happening is because people who are awakening, they're looking for information. They're actually incredibly drawn to this type of information, but they don't know how to use their intuition yet because we're all starting to wake up. So the purpose of getting bad information mixed with good information is so that we begin to use our critical thinking skills and stop being followers and start being, I wouldn't say leaders, but kind of like co-leaders, like everybody is kind of walking together as one. And we need to learn how to use our intuition. And what I've noticed is that there's a lot of infighting. There's a lot of finger pointing. It's like, and people will say, what is your real agenda? Or this person's a liar versus that person, or I've got the truth and you don't. And the truth is that none of us have the truth, and that we're all trying to come together and figure out how to use our intuition first and to use our critical thinking skills, because we have to kind of like, and ultimately we've got to come together as a community and put these ridiculous differences aside. It's no different than the type of division you see in religion, where there's different sects and everyone's fighting over it. Like who's right and who's wrong. So we have to put those differences aside. And that's the biggest problem that I see right now. And this is a phase that we're going through. And it's why it's so important that we bring people together for a unified cause. And that should be to love yourself and love each other, but to help each other and to put these differences aside and say, look, so-and-so said this, but I don't know if it's true. And this person said that. I'm pretty sure that's true, but who cares? Because we really need to focus on each other and what's happening in our world to make it a better place. And that's why when we create this group, I want to get it focused on something much of a much higher purpose, which is actually goes beyond all of that, and actually getting people to organize together, not just to help each other, but to do positive things in their communities and to come together for positive causes on a global scale. And you had that particular vision. Remember when right after we first got together, and it was like the first couple of weeks, and you were shown that psychic vision of a grid across the planet. Remember that?
Oh, that was a meditation. Yeah,
Okay,
that was
please,
incredible.
please tell everybody about that, because that was very
Well,
inspiring to me, and I've gotten similar things since.
well, considering I hadn't done any meditation for so long, and I'm pulling myself to pieces, going, "Oh, it's going to take me forever to, relax enough." And then it's like, no, just get your butt out there and just do it. So I did, and I sat. I've got this beautiful veranda that overlooks, a dam, and it's lovely, it's peaceful. So I got out there, and I thought, yep, I'll just start to, and it just happened so quickly. And I could see the globe, the planet, and I could see. There was like a triangular grid pattern all over the planet, and it was pink. It was like a pink light. And at each point where those triangles met, so you've got your triangles that were joined. So where they're actually joined, there would be somebody sitting there like me, meditating and trying to put some positive, aspect out there. But that was really powerful, because sitting there and actually I'm going, okay, God, we need to, send out some love to the planet, because it's really suffering right now. So this is what, nearly 2 years ago now.
Yeah,
and
it's gotten much worse in those 2 years.
Oh, it has, and you can feel the energy is pretty heavy out there. But this was interesting, because when I actually realized what it was, and then I was thinking about everybody else on the planet, and at that specific moment, I got pictures of people in China, in Vietnam, wherever, all over the planet, and they were just doing different things. And at that moment, they just stopped, and it was like they could hear me. They could hear that I was thinking about them, because they stopped what they were doing, and they were like almost acknowledging me. And I'm going, okay, can we just send everybody love? Because we just need so much positive right now. There's so much fear. There's so much uncertainty. Can we just send love down? And in that instant, there was this massive big beam of light that came down, just went right around the planet. And I went, wow, that's incredible. But that wasn't as good as what came back. And what came back was this beautiful flood of like reciprocated love towards me. It was like, thanks for that. And here, cop this back. And it was just so beautiful. It was that intense. I actually started crying afterwards. I came out and I just started crying, because I'm going, wow, there's so much love out there still, but we're being, pushed down, covered up, controlled, manipulated, and we're choking that. We're not actually letting that be. If we could just put more effort into positive aspects, because right now we're at that point where we can change this and we can turn this in the right direction, if we don't get bogged down in all the fear mongering and the scare tactics that are out there. But I mean, whether we're going to be able to do that, I don't know.
Excuse me. I think we will, but it's going to take a long time, and it's going to take a lot of work, and it really, we have to start now. So instead of waiting for somebody else to do it, you and I have to do it. And my vision of it was that, as you were seeing, like kind of like a grid type of thing going on, what if we formed large communities of, light workers? Just call us light workers. Doesn't matter where your soul came from. And then you have these large communities doing these group consciousness type of exercises. And then we form a network, and we actually start doing group consciousness exercises at the same time, same day, all over the world. And you don't have to be sitting and doing some sort of meditation thing. You could just kind of take a moment at work, if you have a spare moment, or at your home or whatever, and you could do this. And what I was thinking is that, we create a group that kind of like is one of the first, but it becomes emulated, and other people say, that's a great concept. We need to do that in our country. We need to do that in our part of the world. And then eventually it just kind of catches on, and then it becomes this grid system where we can actually all come together and do something positive. And like you were saying, there's still a lot of love out there, but it's unharnessed. It's all, we have all this potential to do something. Yes, and we're being tricked into thinking we can't do anything. And the state's going to take care of you, and here's something to stick in your body, and you need to do this. And Anyway, it kind of brings me to the idea that, well, what the elites are trying to do. I don't want to get sidetracked a little bit here because we want to get into the spiritual aspects of some things. We got some interesting stories to share with everybody too. But, the reason for this Neuralink and this cellular brain interface is to destroy the Great Awakening. It's to suppress our thoughts and control and police them. Mm. And if there's anybody out there that hears someone, whether they be a starseed influencer or anyone else, and tells you that Neuralink or some sort of brain implant is the part of the Great Awakening, you need to get away from them immediately, because it is absolutely not. It really what it is. It's the mark of the beast system. And the Bible, whether you believe in it or not, from my perspective, it's predictive programming. It was put in there because there's been a lot of remote viewing studies by the Farsight Institute. And when they look into this and they see these events that have taken place under a theological context, in every case, what they're seeing is extraterrestrials. What are angels considered to be? They're extraterrestrials. So it depends on how you look at it, but really you're looking at the same thing. And I think we need to put those differences aside. And if you come from the God, perspective, I come from the ET perspective. This is a fusion of the two. And that's what needs to happen, because it's always been kind of the same thing. And we need to get past this belief system where people think that ETs are negative, that they're all demons. Well, they're also angels too, and they play both sides of this. And we're being engineered, and we need to do our part and make the world a better place. And there's all this unharnessed potential, and they want us. The evil people running things want us to forget that we have this potential, that we have this innate ability in us to change things, because they want to control everything.
And they also want to take away that connection to God too, because if they can do that, then they can control you.
Oh, absolutely. Communism. Take a look at communism. The first thing it wants to do is destroy spirituality. It doesn't want you to connect with the source consciousness. They want you to be dependent on the state so they can treat you like cattle. It's an evil system. I mean, there's aspects of it where, there's going to be, some socialized things, but these are things that you're not going to get. You're not going to get your free healthcare without it being weaponized. They're not going to get rid of hate speech, because, basically what it is, when they say they're getting rid of hate speech, they're just censoring everybody and calling everything hate speech that doesn't go along with their narrative. And we have to have free speech. We have to have freedom of expression, and we have to respect one another. I mean, we're all adults, and there's children coming in, but they've been adults too, because we've all been reincarnated and have lived many lifetimes. So, we need to take our psychic birthright back. And I just wanted to mention one thing before we get into the next story, because I think I'll start, unless you want to share something, is that actually I've lost my train of thought. I really hate that. What was like, let me think about this for a second. Now, just why don't you start?
You're still recording?
Yeah, I am recording stuff. But what was it? I can't think of it. Anyway, do you have anything you'd like to share while I get my thoughts together?
I
was going to make a great point,
but through my head, but I can't actually fixate on anything at the moment. So sorry, I can't help you.
Okay, well, we're having a brain fart moment here. All right, I'm going to start with this little story that I had, and this is something that is happening to a lot of people right now. A lot of people who are light workers are recognizing that they're psychic. A lot of people who are starseeds have had experiences throughout their life where they've had these random psychic experiences. And a lot of times what that is, in most cases, what that is that your guides, your life engineers. So just getting to that, you have more than, but you have two or more, usually several guides. Could be 1, 2, 3, whatever. Sometimes there's fill-ins, and then you have life engineers. That's a council of 3 that essentially make the rules up and figure out. They sort of engineer your life. It's kind of self-explanatory, but they supervise the guides, and then there's a hierarchy above that. It's usually councils of 3, and anyway, they're the ones that set you up to have these experiences. So this one particular interesting experience happened to me when a friend of mine passed away of a sudden heart attack. And his name was Sean. And we had this little promise with each other. It was just something we randomly talked about one night, because I brought up that I had this soul transference memory, and back then I didn't know much about what I was recalling. I didn't understand it, so I thought of it. I kind of saw it from a spiritual point of view, because originally the memory was shrouded in a white haze, and it looked like heaven. I thought it was maybe angels or something, but it didn't seem right. So we were talking about this one night, and I said to him, or he said to me, I don't remember how it went, but he said to me, he goes, "I think you weren't supposed to remember that." And I said, "I don't know, maybe I was." And I said, "Well, look, let's make a pact. Let's make a little promise to each other. If you die first, I need you to try to contact me and let me know you're there. And I'll do the same thing for you." And we made this little promise. So anyway, when he passed away, I remember getting the call early in the morning. A friend of mine called me up and told me the bad news. And it was just like, it was 9 o'clock in the morning and I was still half asleep. And this kind of just started this whole thing for the next few days, like 4 days later, by the time we had the funeral and everything. And he had two viewings in one day and then a funeral the next day. And so anyway, I don't remember exactly how this went, okay, because it's kind of a blur now to a bit. So I don't know the order of things, but I just remember, I think it was, it was the night before the funeral. It was actually, no, what happened was I went to the first viewing and the second viewing. And what I noticed was when I went into the funeral home and I was walking around, there was little groups of people here or there, and it was a pretty big room because he had a lot of friends, and his whole family was in this big, they had restaurants and a bunch of other companies and things that they own. So there was a lot of people coming there that were actually work related or knew the family from some service they did. And they had a limo business too. So there was a lot of people coming in. And I remember walking around and I kept feeling this sense, and it's what people describe in a near-death experience. It's like the absence of the body. When you separate from the body, you have this calming peace. It's like everything that you're connected to is no longer generating part of your experience. So it's the body's gone, and it's like this, it's like this tranquil feeling, but at the same time, it's like, where's my body? I'm not used to this. And anyway, I was sensing that in like different places in the room, and it was weird because it was like little pockets of it. I'd walk into it and I'd feel it. And what I found out later is that he was testing me to see if I could sense this. So I'm picking all this up. So anyway, the viewings happen. I go home and I'm obviously upset because we were pretty close. And so anyway, I just remember being in the kitchen. And I was in this state of grief where I just kind of thought to myself, it seemed like I knew what was going to happen next. And I said to myself, why does it feel like the past, present, and future are all kind of happening at the same time? And I'm just kind of caught in the middle of it. And, and I had this voice say to me, very, very clear. I knew who it was. And this person she said, "The world is a simulation, Nathan. You know that." And that's where this planetary consciousness simulation kind of began. It was just 2016 when this happened. It was before the presidential election. It was like, I think it was spring of 2016 when this information started to come. And I was just kind of blown away at the concept because I didn't know what it meant. But then a little while later, I literally felt, and I was still in the kitchen, and I was at the sink, and I was crying, and I wiped the tears away, and I felt somebody standing behind me. And it was Sean, and he spoke to me, and we talked briefly. And what he did is he asked me, he says, "I need you to talk to my older brother, Tony. I need you to tell him the thank you for everything he's done for me, and that I loved him." What he said is I love him, but I've never been able to tell him that. And I need you to tell him this. And this is extremely important. And not all of this didn't all come through words. There were some spoken words, but it came as an emotional concept as well as a telepathic, like a cognitive, I don't know how to describe it, but you have an emotional side to it, and then there's a cognitive side to it. So I got it all at once, along with the couple spoken words. So he didn't have to say that much, and it had a really intense impact on me. So, and then I told him, I said, look, if you go into the light, make sure you've taken care of everything, because they're not going to let you come back. I said, you're going to be reincarnated. So that's what's going to happen to you. So make sure you take care of everything you need to take care of before you leave. And I said, I'll take care of this for you. And then I went to bed and I was laying there in bed. And that's when he really attached himself to me. And I felt his pain. And it literally made me shake. I was laying in bed and I was shivering and shaking. My legs, remember, my legs were like, I had like tremors. And I started crying. And I had this really, really intense energy exchange. So literally, I felt everything that he was going through. And it was the exact opposite of what I heard the next day with the long sermon that, the priest did, or the pastor. I think it was a Methodist church. And so it was a pastor, I believe. And they said that, oh, his pain is gone and he's with God and everything's great. And what I felt was totally different. He lost his daughter. He lost his brother. He lost his mother, his stepfather, all of his friends. So we're grieving one person. He's grieving everybody. And he can't reach out to anybody. And
yeah, actually that's a really poignant point, because we don't think about that. We're so sort of hung up on our own experience, and we've lost this person, but we don't think about it from their side, do we?
Right. And we're told everything's great on their end. There's nothing going on. So they're happy as can be. And how could they be, and you have to look at it from a normal set of human perspective, like a human interaction perspective. Because if you look at it through the way that the clergy frame it, or some people have different new age belief systems, however they frame it, it's not really, I've never heard it put this way. And so anyway, I had this powerful experience. And then the next day we had the funeral, and that was very difficult to deal with. And then we had this wake, and it was the family had this particular restaurant, and we were in there, and I had to talk to Tony the whole time. And it was like the hardest thing I ever had to do, because not only did it, because I didn't really know Tony. I was kind of like, Tony knew my brother, actually knew my uncles. He'd been to my house maybe once or twice because he grew up in the neighborhood, but he was a lot older than me, like 20 years older than me. So, and I was raised not by my mother. My mother gave me up. Some bad things happened when she was 17, when she had me, and her mother raised me. So I was raised by my grandmother, and my uncles were like, my brothers, and my mother was kind of in and out of my life for quite a while. And so I was like, it was a little bit different arrangement there. But, but I didn't have this connection with Tony at all. And I didn't know how to even start this conversation, because what is he going to think? I'm crazy? So.
Yeah, they usually do, but I'm okay with it now. I'm okay to be crazy.
Right, exactly, because it's real and they need to know it, and it's our responsibility. I mean, we have gifts and we have to use them. But not only that, though, I actually had his pain with me. So I felt the love and pain and the loss of his brother and his family. And I felt this protective kind of feeling around his brother, like the exact way Sean had felt. So I felt all of his pain, and it stuck with me, and it stayed with me for about 3 weeks after that. But I just remember at the wake, and I'm watching Tony go around, and he's taking a picture here. He's saying hi to this person and that person. And there was a whole big room of like 100 people. And finally I got enough. Finally, it was like the last hour of the whole thing. And I finally got up, like, I got to do this now or I'm not going to do it. And I walked over to him and I pulled him aside. And unfortunately, I was so emotionally distraught that I could barely get the words out. And what I did say was everything that I needed to say. I just wish I had more time to elaborate. And that was the biggest issue. But I told him that, I said, look, I had this experience last night and at the viewing with your brother, and then afterward. And he told me that he had something that he wanted me to tell you, and is that he loved you and that he couldn't say it. And that you've done so much for him to protect him and help him through all of the things that his mistakes and whatever he's done. And after I got all this out, it took me, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes just to say a little bit of stuff, because I couldn't get my words out. I was crying. I couldn't get my breath. He looked at me and he said, what you've just told me is something that nobody knew about. And he says, it's a confirmation to me that you really did hear from him. And he thanked me for it. And he sincerely thanked me. And before we got a chance to talk more, some business associates of his like pulled him away to go talk to somebody and take a picture or something like that. And I didn't get a chance to say anything else to him. But that was one of the really the only time that had ever happened to me up to this point. I've never had to do that again. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But also, too, it was something I always wanted to do because I had seen other people do that. And I thought, that would be a great way to help people because I've had these psychic experiences. Why can't I be somebody who does the same thing and not charge people money for it and try to make a living out of it and abuse what I have? So it was a way for them to kind of open the door and test me to see what I was capable of actually doing. So they made the ETs around me, made that happen. They opened the door and everything just kind of fell into the right places. So anyway, do you have anything you'd like to add to that or say?
Well, I was just thinking I had a similar sort of thing when I had, I couldn't even really call them friends. They were acquaintances that I knew. And she ran a shop and he was the husband. And I mean, I didn't know anything about their personal lives. And I found out later that he had a brain tumor and all that sort of stuff, and he wasn't going to be around for long. And I think everybody assumed that he was going to live longer. And I think he did too. Well, I know he did too. But I woke up in the middle of the night, not having had a lot of interaction with this person. He just turned up in my bedroom. So I'm lying awake, looking up, going, and what are you doing here? And I mean, I knew he'd passed away, but I was a bit surprised that he was in my room because, as I said, I had not much interaction with him at all. It was more with his wife. And he said, I really need you to talk to my wife. And I'm like, you do realize it's like 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning or something. He's going, yeah, but can you please just go and see her for me? I need her to know that I'm still here, And I thought, okay, how am I going to, face this one? So luckily I always get a little bit of guidance. So that was good. So I was told to go and buy a bunch of flowers and go and see her. And so I did that. I went around and knocked on a door and had this bunch of flowers. And I said, look, I just, wanted to come and give you my condolences because, I heard that he passed away. Rah, rah. And she goes, oh, that's so sweet of you. Come in, she's so lovely. They're such a lovely family. Anyway, the whole time I'm there, he's there going,
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll get to that. I don't want to look like I'm a complete, rat bag. Anyway, she made me a cup of tea and she sat, and she's obviously still really upset. She was crying and stuff. And we were just talking, and I said, look, I'm sorry, and I don't really know how to approach this because I've not done this before. But I said, you do realize he's still here? And she goes, what? And I said, and he wants you to know that he's just as stunned as you are that he's passed away as quickly as he did because he was expecting to be here for longer. And it's really cut him up because there was so much more that he still wanted to do with you. And he's a bit angry about it. He's actually not happy about it. And he just wants me to tell you that. And she just looked at me and then she just started crying. And I said, you have to talk to him. There's stuff that you need to say to him. And she goes, oh, yeah, there is. And, she was trying to, put it into words. And I said, well, he's right here. He's right there. Mm-hmm. And she goes, oh, really? Anyway, after pulling myself to pieces and wondering if I should do this, it was so good to actually have that, have broached that and actually gone and done it, because it gave her so much comfort. And I didn't realize that it would help her that much. And obviously she needed to hear it, and he definitely needed someone to tell her that. And maybe that was just enough for her to go to bed that night and start talking to him, and say, I really miss you, or, so it was, yeah, that was probably, but look, I had so many experiences before that with people that had passed away, and that person was there going, you need to tell them I'm right here. I'm just here, I'm going, I'm not telling them that. Oh, but, I didn't mean to die. And I'm going, yeah, I still can't tell them that. I really don't know them well enough, and they're going to think I'm an absolute nutcase.
Right.
So there was a lot of times that I didn't say things, and now I know I should have said something, regardless of the fact of whether it was going to make me look bad. It would have probably helped them a little bit, So yeah, definitely say something. And I would sort of suggest that to anybody that has those experiences, because it's always, you know, it's you, it mightn't even make sense to you. You might get a message that comes through to tell somebody, and it won't make any sense to you, the person that's delivering the message, but just deliver it anyway, because 9 times out of 10, even if it doesn't make sense to them now, it'll make sense to them in the future. So, yeah.
Well, you really brought up something interesting. It's a learning process.
Mm.
And it's just like with anything that you do that's out of the ordinary. You know, for me, I don't wear shoes. So it's been about 7 years. I wear moccasins for about 2 months out of the year, but I usually go barefoot. So going into a store and then being afraid that somebody's going to say something to me, and then having a couple of interactions like that, that was like, you know, you kind of like, you get a thicker skin and you learn from it. And it's not that big of a deal. If they tell you to leave, you go somewhere else. But the same thing goes with this. For example, I mean, I felt the same way when I had to tell this, you know, to Tony. I mean, I felt like I was going to be looked at like not just being crazy, but why in the hell would you do this to me? This is an insult to me. And you feel, and you're like, did I really have this experience? I mean, yes, I did. It was extremely powerful, but at the same time, how am I going to convince somebody that? So it's just, you go through this process. It's just learning. It's a learning experience, and it's a growth experience as well, because you're growing as you do it, and you're becoming that person you need to be, that you were intended to be, to help other people.
Well, that's what you hope, hey? You really do. I mean, you, at the end of the day, you want to support people and you want to give them that help if they need it. You don't want to be leading them up the garden path, and I know we talked about that quite a few times. I mean, I've been absolutely anal about trying to get the truth out there and impressing that people need to use their intuition. But as you say, right now, they're getting bombarded with a whole heap of misinformation.
Right.
That they have to sift through. So I can't emphasize that enough. If they're watching a video, even ours, and there's something that doesn't resonate with them or doesn't feel right in their gut, then for goodness sakes, forget it, because I get that all the time. I'll be flicking through videos and it'll be, yep, watch this one and you watch that. Okay, now listen to this. Now forget about that. Forget about that. Now listen to this. So if you can get to that sort of stage where you can filter through and you can glean the information that you need to, I think that's where we probably all need to be. And you know what? We can do it. We are definitely there. It's just that people have, and I mean, now they're so scared and they're pushing everybody down and, you know, oh, you can't do this. And when you go out, you have to, you know, all this sort of rubbish. So they're demoralizing people. And there's a reason for that. We all pretty much know that. But we as people need to understand just how much power we have within ourselves, whether you want to call it the God connection, the ET connection, the whatever, but there is something there, right? Even you have to admit to that. There is something there. There's something potent there, and it's a good potent. It's not a bad potent.
Yeah, well, it's excuse me. It's like what I say all the time. A lot of times I will finish a video and I'll say that reality is let me see, how did I put it last time? I used source. Reality is the source consciousness's dream, or, you know, it's God's dream, and we are nothing but thoughts in a never-ending story. So for me, that's how I see it, is that we're just a product, we're just thoughts of an infinite mind that is just, you know, that needed to create other people. It needed to have company. And that's kind of like it says, you know, in the Bible, God was lonely, so he created all of us. But so we're actually the create. Now I remember what I said. I said reality is the creator's dream, and we are nothing but thoughts in a never-ending story. And so that's how I see it. And that's what we're really sensing, is that there's a desire for peace, love, and harmony everywhere. And when we work to create that, then we're fulfilling the creator's wish, or the will of the creator, and it feels good and it makes things better. And that's really what we should be working on. And by the way, I have to say, I could not have asked or even picked, or even just in my wildest dreams, to have a partner to do this with who's any better than you. You're perfect. So I just want you to know.
Thank you. That's really sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry I annoyed. I'm sorry I annoyed you in the beginning there, but I'm glad I did now, because you know you've put a lot of things to me too, so, and made me question things as well. And probably put me on the path that I'm on now as well. So it's, yeah, I'd say it's reciprocated.
And this is so easy to do, and it feels so good to do it. And we're doing exactly what we're supposed to do. And it's the will of source. So I think that's a win-win right there. Now I got a kind of a creepy story to share real quick. I'll try to get it quick. I mean, we're almost out of time for tonight, but we're going to do this again, obviously, every week at least, maybe twice a week sometime. We'll see how it goes. But I have this kind of creepy story. It's a sad story at the same time. My younger brother, Ken, began renting this house in Friendsville, Maryland. The house has been torn down now, but it was like a house that was like added on to. So it was like, there's this saying called the house that Jack built. It was like Jack built this house and it was like added onto it, and it was crooked floors and everything. Well, this was like that. And anyway, what was going on is prior to him moving in, there was a couple hippie guys that were living there. It was two roommates, and they were taking this chemical that they were getting from China. It was like some kind of like K2 or some kind of drug that was legal, that was very dangerous, but at the same time there was no prohibition on it. So what they were doing is they were buying large quantities of potpourri and putting it into like one of those rotary composters and then pouring this psychoactive drug on it from China. So you can imagine you're putting something in your body from China and you're smoking potpourri. I think it's going to end wrong with the wrong way. And they were doing it because they were selling this stuff at hippie music festivals. And there's there's like an outdoor concert circuit that kind of goes up and down the East Coast. They're all over the place. They're in other countries too. It's not raving, but it's more like 60s music. And I think there's some electronic music in there too. And so I've only been to one of these, and it was just like a lot of light shows, and it was just a big outdoor field, and a lot of people camping. And anyway, they were selling this stuff and making money at it. And I guess that's what they're using to pay their rent. Well, anyway, one night they were smoking this crap. And the one person thought that his roommate was like a monster, and he got the shotgun out and loaded it. And he was standing at the top of the steps, and it was like they added a room on where the front door was. So it was like this long, it was not long, but it was narrow. It was a narrow room. And there was another door that went to the outside because they just enclosed it in. And and it was these sliding, it was like a sliding door there, I believe, when I remember. And the guy, his roommate, was outside. He was on the floor, standing on the floor, and there was a couple of steps that went up to the kitchen. And that was the sliding door was there. And he pointed the shotgun at him. And the guy literally, from the account of the survivor who was holding the shotgun, even though he was intoxicated, the guy grabbed the gun barrel and said, "You're not going to shoot me, are you, bro?" And he pulled it towards his head. And when he did, it went off and it blew his head completely apart. It was so bad that when my brother moved in, they had, obviously they had completely cleaned it, but there was still some evidence tags in the ceiling. And it was like a drop ceiling with that kind of spongy type of ceiling tile that fits into the drop ceiling frame. And they had these little pins with these little numbers on there. And there was literally fragments of skull that was there. And he sent me these pictures. So,
oh gosh,
about a year or less went by, and I drove out there, and I spent the night, and I forget exactly why I was there, but I was there to visit for some reason. And I spent the night, and him and his girlfriend were sleeping in this one bedroom, which was part of the original house. And I was on an air mattress that I bought, and I put it on the floor, right a couple feet from their entrance to their room. And nobody had told me the house was haunted or anything like that. But after everybody went to bed, I felt the room fill up full of this depression and like this dreadful depression feeling. And so instead of being afraid, because these things don't frighten me, I started to talk to this person telepathically in my mind. And I didn't get a verbal response, but I got were emotional concepts. And I told him, I said, I said, you really should move on if you can. But if you do, you're going to be, because I understood that if he was still here, and what that really is he's in an individual consciousness simulation, or it could be a nested consciousness simulation. And that's where the ETs take people who aren't fit for reincarnation. These are human souls. And what they do is they put them either in a nested consciousness simulation, which we call the spirit world. This is where poltergeist activity comes from, and hauntings and so forth. So they're kind of like, we're at one level of awareness with our consciousness within a planetary consciousness simulation, and they're in a nested version of it without a body. So this person could have been an individual one, and that's where residual hauntings come from, where somebody just keeps, well, we see a residual haunting take place, and it looks like it's not intelligent because the person just repeats the same thing over and over again. They see a woman walk through a garden with a white dress on every night, or so many nights a week, or a certain day of the year, whatever. And they're not interacting with anybody. If you walk over, they disappear, but they don't interact with you. So they think it's not, they think it's an impression on the environment that replays itself in some way, some sort of energetic impression, usually based on a traumatic event or something like that. But really, it's a person trapped in an individual or a group consciousness simulation. And they're all nested because they're in the augmented reality that we're living in right now, bound to the five senses, which is why we can't help these people in most cases. Now, there are people like mediums, like the stuff that we're talking about doing, who are here to help them move on and go into the light, or give them some kind of guidance.
Exactly. Yeah, they can do that. That's right. I mean, I think it's sad when I watch, sorry to interrupt, but I just think it's sad to watch things on YouTube and they've got, come on, we're going to go and have a look at this haunted place. And they're not actually trying to help the ghost or help the spirit to move on. And the fact that they're trapped there. And, I get quite sad about that, because I know that they could get help and be released. But, these people make a sideshow out of it. Come on, I can sell tickets here. I've got a bar that's haunted. Come and have a look at my bar that's haunted.
And somebody's suffering.
I think it's wrong. It's like keeping an animal in a cage.
Exactly.
There you go.
And this could be, a child, it could be an adult. And it really doesn't, because when you go into these consciousness simulations, you're still the person you were when you're alive, and you're at that age. So if you were a child and you were put into a consciousness simulation like that, then you're still that child, and you have to reach a point of self-reflection to where you're ready to move on and go, and then the light will appear to you. Sometimes, like when you have a haunting, for example, they either try to get the ghost to leave and leave the people alone, or they get him to go into the light. So it's one or the other. And a lot of times when they go into the light, they don't always go and be reincarnated. They may just be relocated and put into a different consciousness simulation someplace else where they can't interfere with people. But what happened this particular night is that I felt this dread, this horrible depression feeling in the room and so forth. And I started communicating with him, and I just gave him some advice. And I just said, and then I got this impression. And what I got is that he was still in shock that his life had just abruptly ended. And how easy it was for it to happen. It just happened such as like a surprise. He was intoxicated, and then he's dead, but he's still alive. His body's gone. He can't interact anymore in the normal way. And he's trapped in this situation. He's trapped in this consciousness simulation. And for those of you who really want to understand how this works, and we're going to talk about this more and more over more podcasts, but think of it like this. This is a great analogy. And this is when I went to Holland, when I was 18, I went to Amsterdam, and, most people didn't speak English. I mean, that was a second language there, but you were so, like, the first time I was at the CNCC Bank, and I was staying, and this is like a marijuana seed company. And I was in this area where there was prostitutes, and there was like all this stuff in these coffee shops. And I was just checking everything out. And I was in the CNCC Bank, and I heard this guy speaking English at the counter, and he spoke like an American, not like somebody from Holland, where it's just their second language. And I instantly went over to him and said, "Hey, you're from the US." I forget what state he was from, but we struck up a conversation and then eventually parted ways. But it's like being in a big room and nobody speaks English except one person. And that's the spirit medium. That's the person with the psychic abilities. And you're the spirit. You're going to go right to them. And that's the person you're trying to get. "Hey, I'm here. Look at me. Can you help? Can you do something for me? Can you pass this message on?" And that's what it's like. It's like, you're in a room and one person speaks your language and the rest don't, and they don't even see you. So in this particular case, this room just fills up with this horrible energy, and it was depressing and miserable. And I started getting these concepts, and I communicated with him. I talked to him, and he communicated through emotional concepts with me, and I had these impressions. And then And then I told him, I said, hey, I said, I got to get up early in the morning and I got to drive like 3.5 hours home. So I'm gonna have to end this conversation, but you really need to figure out a way to get out of this. And you need to move on and you need to come to grips with this. And you need to just process what's happened to you and realize that it's time for you to move on, because this is a living hell that you're in and you can't stay this way. And anyway, he left the room and all the energy cleared out. And then I started to doze off. And then I felt him literally right over top of me. He was right on top of me. And I kept waking up. And he did it several times. And finally, I'm like, look, I know you're trying to get my attention and you want to talk or communicate, but you really got to let me sleep. Because I got to have some sleep, because I don't want to drive off the road and have an accident tomorrow. And then he finally left me alone. But it was sad because, and then I brought this up the next day, because after my brother went, after he went to work, he was unreachable. If he brought any of this up, he was, oh, that's bullshit. That doesn't happen. But his girlfriend said, yeah, I've been trying to tell Ken this whole time that there's a ghost in this house. And she said, I see him from my, peripheral vision. I'll see him, somebody moving, and this will happen or that'll happen. And I sense it around me. And one of the things that used to happen is they had a couple like 4 or 5 Irish setters, and they would leave and go out and leave the dogs just roaming the house. Well, when they would come back, the dogs would be in this guy's room, which was now a storage room. It was like a mattress leaning against the wall, some boxes and some junk in there. And the door was always shut. The dogs would always wind up in there with the door shut when they came home. So the guy was literally opening the door and playing with the dogs, and the dogs would go in the room and he'd hang with them, and then they'd be stuck in there until somebody came back to let them out. And it was just such a sad thing to see this and to recognize and to see. And this is one of the problems living in this augmented reality, is because there's people suffering at different levels of awareness all around us. And most people don't even see it, and they treat it like a circus sideshow, like you were saying. So what do you think? You got something to share?
Well, if they can make money out of it, it just, because my son likes to watch all these things on YouTube that are scary related or ghost related or whatever. And I mean, I just get really angry when I watch it, because I think, well, these souls should be set free. They should be sent home. They shouldn't be here. And you talking about that made me think of a book that I read, which was When Ghosts Speak. And it's based on the Ghost Whisperer series that was on TV. And this was the lady that actually really did, she had the connection with people in the past and stuff. And you talk about like the souls being trapped here and that. And she said this, that like some of the stories that she tells is really quite interesting, how people who pass and they've got, this angst towards somebody, and then they'll attach themselves to that person. And this person will be experiencing all these horrible things happening around them and to them. And it's somebody that rejected them at a high school dance, 20 years previous.
Right.
Something stupid like that. But because it's really affected that person, they've held on to that. And then beauty, I'm gone now, and come and haunt them or give them a hard time. And she would actually go in there and she'd clear them off. She'd send them home. But there was also the fear factor I wanted to mention, because there's a lot of souls that are trapped here that can't get home, or they don't want to face the judgment that they are, they fear. They think they're going to get up there and get judged critically, and they won't be able to move on.
I have a great story. You just reminded me of something. So go ahead. I've got a story.
No, go for it. That was it. So go for it.
Well, that's a very important point that you brought up, because that's really the theological programming. So when I was a little boy, my Aunt Patricia she bought this house, and it was in, I think it was on Harford Road in Baltimore, Maryland, but I'm not 100% sure. I think it was either Harford Road or off of Harford. I think it was off of Harford Road, because Harford Road's a pretty busy road, but it was a neighborhood. I think it was off of that. And she still owns the house. I haven't been able to get back in it since. So there's been like this rift in the family and stuff, and just things going on with her husband with mental illness and stuff. And I never get a chance to go back there, but the attic was haunted. And my mother, when she had me, and what happened was that when my mother had me, she had me when she was 17, and she had ran away from home, more or less. She still wasn't 18 at that point. So she ran away from home because her parents split up, and my step grandfather came into the picture. And he was a Baltimore City police officer. He was abused as a child. He had narcissistic personality disorder. He was an alcoholic. And after about 6 or 7 months, he started to exhibit all the narcissistic personality disorder traits because he couldn't maintain the act anymore. By then, my grandmother had pretty much married him and was taking care of his 2 sons. And she had her two, which is my uncle who passed away at 41 in a trucking accident, which is a whole nother story I could tell, similar to what we're talking about. But anyway, it was the two of them. So she had 4 kids. One was away from home, and that was my mother. So at that point in time, after my mother kind of gave me to her mother, she went and lived with my Aunt Patricia, and she was in this attic, and the only place to stay, because my great grandmother was living there too. She had co-signed on the house, and she was living on the first. She was living upstairs, and my Aunt Patricia and her husband were living, and their son were living on the first floor. And it was a really cool house the way it was set up. But my mother could tell you all these different stories, but I'm not going to share her stories. I'm going to talk about what happened to me. So I went over there 3 or 4 times, and I was always there with my mother and my stepfather. And this was after my mother kind of got her shit together and was starting to come back in my life again. I think I was like 4 years old at this point. So they take me over to Aunt Patricia's house, and I like to go there because the ghost was there. So when you go up to the steps, when you walked in the door to the left-hand side, there was the wall, and you went up the steps, and then the stairwell, there was a landing, and it kind of wrapped around. It had a big cathedral ceiling that went straight up. And that's where my great grandmother's apartment was with her husband, but when you walked around that landing and you got right to where the attic stairs were, she had this vinyl door that was pulled across the stairwell for the attic. And there was a living room area to the left. And on your right-hand side, there was a big drop off because it went straight down to the first floor, and there was a railing there and everything. It was like a hallway, but one side was open, and a drop, like a whole story down to the ground. And in this living area, you could just feel this presence, and it wasn't a happy presence. It was very depressed and dreadful feeling. And it would just freak me out. So I could tell that there was a zone of energy right at the stairwell going up to the attic. So I was afraid to go up there by myself. And I would usually go down and bug the shit out of my stepfather or whoever would take. I'd say, "Hey, can you go up there with me? I really want to go." And they'd be talking and talking and talking. I'm tugging on his shirt, I'm tugging on his pants. "Can you please take me to the attic?" So he didn't always do it. So I would just get the courage up to do it. So this one particular, it happened a couple of times. This one day I was standing in front of the door, and I opened it up, and I realized that the further I went up, the stronger the sensation came. And when I got up to the top of the floor where the attic was, it was split in 2 halves. There was a door right in the middle of it, and this dividing wall. And the feeling got much worse as I got to the furthest part of the attic. When I got to the back half of it that was separated by the wall, when you go through the doorway, because the person wanted to get as far away from anybody as they possibly could. And when I got up there, they moved to the back end of the attic, and they were making it feel horrible. So I would leave. Right. So, and then
you followed them. Yeah. Good on you.
Yeah. And then my stepfather would creep up the steps and go, "Boo." And I'd scream and stuff. He did like once or twice to me, so, but what happened is that my mother was up there, and she had to sleep in the attic. So after a while, she started sleeping on the hallway where the railing was, where I was describing, because it got so bad. When she would sleep up there, she'd sleep with the light on, and she would have the sensation of like the room would spin and she was falling asleep. It was just the person was trying to get everybody out of there. It was a woman, and how they found out is my aunt did a seance. And actually, I think it was a seance. They did a couple of them, and they did something with a Ouija board. And one of the nights, the light bulb blew out. Literally, the bulb like blew. It just blew up, and like in the lamp, and it freaked everybody out. But with the information they got, and this has to do with the theological belief system. This woman, this is back when abortion was illegal in not just Maryland, but across the United States. She had this back alley abortion. She died during the procedure. And she thought because she had this abortion, she murdered her baby and she died in the procedure, she was going to hell. So she wouldn't go into the light. And the light may not have appeared to her. I don't know. But that's what happened. And she was in probably either obviously a nested consciousness simulation, but either an individual or a group one. And what I mean by a group one is that you could have an entire group of people all over the planet inside the same consciousness simulation as in spirit form, and they're all interacting with people, and they go through portals. Because my friend Scott actually had a haunted pantry where it was a massive portal. It was like a subway station. I've got to make a video. I've got footage from the security camera that he put up on his porch after he completely enclosed the porch in. And he was literally, I mean, it was just, he had all sorts of activity, but we're talking hundreds, if not thousands of orbs whipping by like a storm of them. And at one point he had some sigils that he wrote down, which are like runes or like symbols from like a new age pagan religion stuff. And he's holding these, he had these cards, like flashcards, and he held it up in front of the camera. And all of a sudden these orbs started to hang around the image or, the card. And one flew between his legs, and the other one was kind of like flying up and down and going like this. And it was all these random orbs going in and out of each other. But what's interesting, if they say it's dust and it would respond in unison, it would be like a draft and you'd see dust go this way. This was all under intelligent control. It's incredible footage. I've got to do a video about it. But anyway, getting back to that, yeah, that woman couldn't cross over, obviously, because of what she was dealing with, but also the fear. So even if the light appeared, she may have been afraid to go into it. And eventually my aunt told me this because I kept asking about it, and I don't know if it was her way of not letting me in the house and just keeping the family out, or maybe it's true, is that, there is nobody in the attic anymore. And they used to have experiences down different parts of the house. And my mother told me this interesting story. She said, I used to sit in that living room area that I was just talking about, was to the left. And she'd sit in there and she'd watch TV or read a book. And she said you could see like a procession of phantoms walking down the hall. There was like shadow people. So there was more than one person there. I mean, and I guess they were hanging out or visiting or whatever. I don't know, because I haven't been in a house.
Maybe they were just having a shadow party get together.
Right, exactly. And they would literally just walk up and down the hallway and she'd see silhouettes, like a procession of like spirits, it's like they're just walking back and forth. And she was scared to death of it. Mm. I back then I was scared because what it is that we really don't understand. Most people don't understand what they're dealing with, and they watch television and movies, and it's designed to scare you. It's designed to give you a false impression of what's really happening. It's doing a disservice to everybody who's trapped in these simulations who need help. So that's some interesting stuff. Do you have anything you'd like to add? Or something new to talk about?
Not at this stage, but I was just thinking there's so much on this we could expand on too. So maybe we could do another video on that. I don't know your views, but there's you just started talking. I mean, we started talking, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, there's that story. Oh, there's that one. Oh, there's that one. Oh yeah, we talk about that. So there's so much that we could expand on this subject alone, let alone everything else that we've spoken about too. So. Yeah, I don't know how long. Well, we've been yapping on for a while now anyway. We got
about, if we're going, we're actually about 70 minutes now, roughly. So I think if you want to go another 20, we'll be 90 minutes, and we'll just call it a night for that. And then we'll just do this again and maybe talk about something different, or go back into this, or do a combination of things. So what do you think? You up for another 20? I think we can come up with something to talk about. It's up to you.
I don't, like I said, my head is swimming right now. There's like heaps of different things.
Okay, well,
I don't even know where to start.
Well, it helps when I was kind of like thinking of something, just another experience I have. My great grandmother was mentally ill, and she lived in this house where I'm at now, and she had a lot of problems. So when she finally passed away, It was actually, she was so bad to me that it was actually a relief that she was gone. It's sad to say that, but that's what happened. And a few years later, I was, and I was actually, I'm downstairs right now. So if I were to go that way, which is opposite what the camera's showing, I'd go to the other half of the basement. And it used to be her apartment over there. So she had half the basement cut in half and put up a dividing wall there and then built a little apartment for herself. And then she moved in. And that's when the problem started because, you know, I'm not going to get into it, but she had some issues and liked to start trouble and stuff. So anyway, I was in that side of the basement after everything had been removed. There wasn't even, there was just still a dividing wall, but the wall that was in between there that separated maybe the living room and then the place where she slept, that was gone at this point. So it was just a big open room, half a basement. So it was about maybe 500 or 600, about 600 square feet. So I'm in there and I'm cleaning something and I've got, you know, it's like a potent smelling cleaner. And, you know, all I'm smelling is, you know, the cleaner and that's it. And the lights are, there's a little bit of light in the room, like a lamp, but it's dimly lit. And all of a sudden, I've smelled, because a lot of times, a lot of these experiences that I've had, they're you smell the person. And my grandmother had this unusual scent because you know, she lived down here with my great grandfather, and he used to drink Sanka coffee, instant coffee, and that's all he drank was caffeinated instant coffee. I mean, literally nothing else. And she always used this hand cream called Pac-One. It came in this jar with a screw-on lid, and it was just this cheapy hand cream stuff. And she was constantly putting it on her hands and stuff. And I smelled that combination of things. And she used to wear a lot of sweaters. And you know, old people don't bathe. Well, I'm not going to say a lot of old, but some old people don't bathe a lot. They get into this habit where their skin dries out and their hair dries out. And like, I don't need to take a bath. I don't feel good. I ache or whatever, you know, and then you get into this habit of bad hygiene. So it wasn't like a body odor smell, but it was just kind of like a mustiness. I don't know. It was like a combination of smells, but I identified these smells with her. And it was Pac-One and stale Sanka coffee and a little bit of like a musty, not like a body odor, like you know how that is, like that acrid smell that we get when we don't clean our armpits and things. Wasn't a sour smell. It was just a different smell, but it was just old and I don't know how to describe it, but the whole room literally filled up with that scent. And I sensed a presence and she was there. And I didn't communicate. I just knew she was there. And the smell was so intense that I couldn't smell the cleaner anymore. It was totally absent. All I smelled was her. And she was letting me know. And what I knew from that, now knowing what I know now, is that she wasn't able to cross over. She was too troubled of a person to do that. She wasn't fit for reincarnation. And they have this system. I refer to it as an AI system, but there's also real people involved in managing it. And decisions are made based on, you could say it's a higher or a lower vibrational frequency, whatever your terminology is. When to put it in layman's terms, it's just the person is too troubled to be able to be reincarnated. They need to have a reflection period, and that's how they've set this up. And she was in that reflection period until she could cross over. And she was just simply coming back to pay a visit to where she used to live. And she knew I was there, because she wasn't in an isolated individual consciousness simulation. She was in probably like a nested group consciousness simulation with a lot of other people, perhaps thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. You never know. But she was able to come here and pay a visit and let me know that she was here. And that was an interesting experience. And another one I had was a lot of times they would come through like smells. And I was wrapping gifts on, it was like Christmas Eve. And I had a couple of gifts because we were going to my wife's family's house. I think we usually we usually would go to her mother and father's house. And then that was for Christmas Eve. And then, you know, for Christmas Day, we'd go to her Uncle Mike's. So it was Christmas Eve. We're getting ready to go over there. And I had some gifts that I had to wrap. And I'm wrapping these gifts. And I'm on the carpet on my knees I'm sitting there in front of the TV, and there's like a cabinet for the TV that fit in. It was back before we had the wall mounted flat screens. We had a big TV and it was in a cabinet. And I started smelling this men's cologne, and I couldn't place where the hell who wore it. And I thought it was coming from some candles that were inside this entertainment center. So I got up and I opened up the door and I started to smell the candles, and they smelled nothing like men's cologne. So I put it back, and I'm like, that's weird. So I go back and I'm wrapping the gifts again. And I realized that I got a pocket of cologne right here and I got nothing over here. And it was like this little pocket. And somebody was there, and I don't know who it was to this day, but that was just another thing. And a lot of times we go through this as we're being tested or conditioned for these types of roles, where we're going to be doing this this sort of work, is that one of the ways it can come through is through just smell. We'll smell someone, and we'll have a certain scent that's associated with a certain friend or family member. That, that's how we recognize them. That was a part of their physical presence. And now they're not there physically, but they're there consciously, and they're letting us know that they're there through a smell.
Yeah, it's like a calling card. They pop in with a little calling card and say, well, this is the only way I can reach you. So this is how I'm going to make contact. Because, everybody's different. And it's like, my son will actually pick up on, he'll see things, and I more so feel things. So if I go into a place and go, quite often he'll go, did you see that over there? And I'll go, no, but I felt it. Yeah. So, there's lots of different aspects. I mean, I really wish he'd get into it, because he's pretty switched on when it comes to this sort of stuff. And when we were doing a bit of theta healing, he amazed me with some of the stuff that came through to him. So, maybe that's going to be something for him in the future.
Well, hopefully he'll be able to join us in a future video, maybe next time or something. You should, let him know that he's more than welcome. He could share some of his stories.
Well, he could certainly share some stories about his grandfather, but I don't even know if he would remember. He was only about 8 at the time, but some of the stuff that was an interesting time for us when my dad passed away. He was quite close to Dad, and we can probably save that for another time if you want to, because
we will.
There's quite a bit in that.
Right, and then we'll figure out something. But so I was just thinking, what else has happened?
Oh, there's lots of different things that we can expand on and talk about, because I said I was sitting here and I'm going, you're mentioning something, and I've got all this stuff going through. I'm going, oh wow, okay, there's probably enough for 10 books here. I don't know.
Right, and we've been talking for close to 3 hours, because we were talking prior to starting the recording, and then we got into the recording and didn't realize we weren't recording. So luckily I figured that out and said, hey, let's stop. It was like 10 minutes in, I think. So, we didn't cover too much. Yeah, now we're in that burnt out stage. The mind is burnt out.
Well, for now, but I mean, I don't know, maybe we can make some notes, and then we should just do what we did today and just sit down and have a chat and see what comes up, because maybe that's the way it's meant to be.
Absolutely. So I think we ought to just wrap this up. So hang on. I'll talk to you after I shut the recording down, and we'll kind of come up with some things. And so for everybody out there watching, thank you for sticking with it for all this, for this whole time. And I hope that you got something really special out of this. And there's a lot more of this to come. Would you like to say goodbye to everybody too?
Yeah, it's nice to give this a go after all this time and all this interaction and preparation. It's nice to see it finally come together. So
awesome. And I just want to say one last thing before we go, is that we're going to be more than just somebody you see on your computer screen or your phone, because
we want to help you.
When we create this group, this the website, and of course the community forum, we're going to be right there in it with you. So, and we welcome everybody else who's had these experiences. It doesn't matter what they are, whether it be extraterrestrial or spiritual, it doesn't matter. You're all welcome to be part of this. And what we're going to be doing is probably the first, I don't know if this has ever been done. I do know there was a little bit of something like this done in Project Avalon. It was called Faces of Avalon, where they were interviewing people from the forum. But and it didn't last that long. I don't know how long, maybe a year or so or whatever, but it didn't go where it should have been. And I wanted to take that concept and go all the way with it and take it as far as we can. So that means everybody will have a chance to share their experiences and be interviewed and interact with us and interact with other people, because it's going to be people helping people who are experiencers, and anybody else who wants to come along and just learn something and be part of a community where people come together out of love and help each other. And that's what I really want to create, is something where we put our differences aside, whether you believe in a completely different concept of reality, or you agree with me, or you agree with somebody else, it doesn't matter. We're all people. We're all in this experience together, and we need to come together for the first time and really do something special and create a grassroots disclosure project. Because the biggest problem that I've had for the last 14 years is getting people who do podcasts and researchers just to respond to me. And I'm, haven't gotten much at all. Most of the time, 99% of the time, they don't respond at all. And you'll wind up watching them do a podcast and interviewing somebody and thinking to yourself, I could have been part of this conversation or part of another one, and have really given a lot more to this whole, knowledge base that we're all tapping into, but I'm being shut out. And there's so many other people that have so much to tell and so much to share and so much to offer, and they're not getting that opportunity.
And they're not getting a voice. That's
right.
They're not getting a voice. Yeah.
And it's kind of where I came up with the name Voices of Orion Project. It's partly because there's voices from Orion and stuff that tell me things. But other than that, it's all of our voices. It's a concert of voices. Doesn't matter where you're from. If you're from Earth, if you're from Orion, if you're from Arcturus, if you're from wherever you come from, you'll have a chance to actually have a voice, and if you want to, and participate in this. And I think that's how we're going to kind of close this up. Would you like to say something else, Diane?
No, just thanks for the opportunity, I guess, to make this happen, and let's hope it goes somewhere else.
I definitely think it will. So we'll see you guys next time, and thank you for tuning in, and make sure you learn to love one another and love yourself. And we got to go. So take care.